The Old Bookstore. The little bookstore on Springville Lane had stood quietly for as long as anyone could remember, its windows dulled by years of dust and stories. It did not boast grand displays or glittering signs, yet there was a peculiar gravity to it, as if the building itself waited patiently for the right visitor. Lila had walked past it countless times during her morning errands, never more than a fleeting glance at the faded letters spelling Grayson's books, until one day a sudden gust of wind pushed her toward the door, and she stepped inside almost without realizing it. The air smelled of aged paper, ink, and a faint hint of lavender, a curious combination that seemed to settle over her shoulders like a shawl. The wooden floorboards creaked beneath her shoes, each sound echoing like a secret whispered in a quiet room. Bookshelves rose high around her, laden with spines of every color and size, some stacked neatly, others leaning with the weight of their own histories. A ladder hung from a rail, promising access to stories beyond reach, and she felt a small thrill at the thought of climbing it, though she did not. An elderly man, his hair the color of winter frost, emerged from behind a stack of books. He did not speak immediately, only nodded in recognition, as though he had known she would arrive. Lila smiled faintly, unsure if she had stepped into a shop or into a pause in time. She wandered between the shelves, brushing her fingers over the spines, feeling the subtle ridges of embossed letters, the smoothness of worn leather, the delicate fragility of paper that had survived decades. Her eyes fell upon a small, nondescript book tucked away on a high shelf, its cover faded to a soft, gentle gray. She had no memory of searching for it, yet the pull was undeniable. Standing on tiptoe, she reached, and the book seemed to hum faintly in her hands. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light from the tall windows as if celebrating the encounter. The moment she opened it, Lila felt a ripple in the quiet air. The pages were filled with words she had written herself decades ago, long before her life had been consumed by obligations, routines, and careful restraint. She remembered composing them late at night, a younger self daring to imagine a life of possibility, of courage, of small joys untainted by fear. Her eyes traced the sentences, each one a reminder of hopes she had nearly forgotten, of dreams tucked into corners of memory. Hours passed unnoticed as she read and reread, the bookstore surrounding her like a warm cocoon. Outside, the city moved in its usual haste, but inside, time seemed to slow, bending around the stories and the quiet resonance of her own words. She realized that she had carried these thoughts silently for years, believing they had been lost, only to find them here, waiting patiently for her return. The old man approached then, moving with the gentle assurance of someone who had witnessed many such awakenings. He did not intrude on her reverie but simply placed a small, perfectly baked biscuit on the counter nearby, a subtle gesture, comforting and unspoken. Lila understood, somehow, that he recognized the gravity of her discovery and the quiet joy it brought. She purchased the book with care, sliding the worn notes into her bag, feeling the texture of the paper as though it were a lifeline. Outside, the sun had begun its descent, painting the streets with amber and rose. Lila walked slowly, letting the light mingle with the words she held close. Each sentence reminded her that life had not been wasted, that courage had always existed in small gestures, that possibility had never truly left her side. Over the following weeks, the bookstore became a quiet refuge. Lila returned often, exploring shelves she had once ignored, discovering corners filled with poetry, travel journals, letters from strangers, and memoirs that seemed to speak directly to her. Each visit reminded her that the world was far larger, far more vibrant than she had allowed herself to believe. The stories whispered not only of lives long past but of the lives she could still choose to live, the moments she could still seize, the small acts of bravery and kindness that mattered more than she had known. The humor and warmth of the place were subtle, woven into the tiniest details. A crooked bookmark left in a novel seemed to wink at her, a stack of books teetered precariously as if daring her to notice, and once, a small kitten appeared from behind the counter, settling on a shelf as if appointed guardian of secrets. Lila found herself smiling often, a light, quiet smile that carried into the rest of her day, warming her from inside out. One evening, as she lingered among the shelves, she came across a letter, unsigned, tucked into a hollowed-out book. It spoke of fear, of hope, of mistakes and second chances. Reading it, she felt the strange sensation of speaking with someone who understood, someone who had once stood where she now stood. The letter concluded with a thought so simple and profound that she held her breath. Even when the world feels too heavy, there is always a way to remember who you were, and who you might yet become. She carried that message with her, letting it settle into her bones. The bookstore was no longer just a place of books, it was a quiet teacher, a gentle reminder that the ordinary could hold extraordinary truths. Each visit became a meditation, each book a portal, each quiet moment a spark. She realized that life was far too fleeting to allow words, dreams, or love to be ignored. The bookstore had shown her that the richness of life often hides in plain sight, waiting for someone to notice, waiting for someone to dare to pick up the pages and read. In time, Lila began leaving notes of her own in the books she discovered, brief messages for strangers she would never meet. She wrote of small joys, silly observations, quiet encouragement, and the thrill of discovering life anew. She understood that even the simplest words could ripple through a life, unseen yet profoundly felt, and that sometimes the act of giving quietly was the most transformative of all. Years later, she would remember the first day she had stumbled into Grayson's books, the way the air had smelled of dust and lavender, the hush of the floorboards beneath her feet, and the warmth that had settled over her. She would remember the thrill of opening that forgotten book, the rediscovery of a self she had nearly misplaced, and the realization that life, despite its complications and disappointments, had always offered her a chance to see, to feel, to grow, and to laugh. The moral of it came gently, like the last pages of a cherished novel, that life's richness is often hidden in quiet corners, in ordinary spaces, in moments easily overlooked. Courage, hope, and joy need not arrive with fanfare. They are there, patiently waiting in a stack of books, a handwritten note, a simple smile, ready for those who choose to notice, ready for those who dare to read the world with open eyes. And so Lila walked home that evening, the book pressed to her chest, sunlight streaking the streets in gold, understanding at last that the extraordinary is often quiet, and that noticing it can transform a life completely.